Captain Weddell, in his voyage towards the South Pole, page 143, writes that one of his men, having been left ashore on Hall's Island to take care of some produce, heard one night, about 10 o'clock, after he had lain down to rest, a noise resembling human cries. As daylight does not disappear in those latitudes at the season in which the incident occurred, the sailor rose and searched along the beach, thinking that possibly a boat might have been upset and that some of the crew might be clinging to the detached rocks. Guided by occasional sounds, he at length saw an object lying on a rock a dozen yards from the shore, at which he was somewhat frightened. The face and shoulders appeared of human form and of a reddish color. Over the shoulders hung long green hair. The tail resembled that of a seal, but the extremities of the arms he could not see distinctly. The creature continued to make a musical noise during the 2 minutes he gazed at it, and, on perceiving him, disappeared in an instant. The universality of the belief in an animal of combined human and fish-like form is very remarkable. That it exists amongst the Japanese we have evidence in their curious and ingeniously constructed models which are occasionally brought to this country. I have one of these, which is so exactly the counterpart of that which my friend Mr. Frank Buckland described, originally in Land and Water, and which forms the subject of a chapter in his Curiosities of Natural History, that the portrait of the one, figure 13, will equally well represent the other. The lower half of the body is made of the skin and scales of a fish of the carp family, and fastened onto this, so neatly that it is hardly possible to detect where the joint is made, is a wooden body, the ribs of which are so prominent that the poor mermaid has a miserable and half-starved appearance. The upper part of the body is in the attitude of a sphinx, leaning upon its elbows and forearms. The arms are thin and scraggy, and the fingers attenuated and skeleton-like. The nails are formed of small pieces of ivory or bone. The head is like that of a small monkey, and a little wool covers the crown so thinly and untidily that, if the mermaid possessed a crystal mirror, she would see the necessity for the vigorous use of her comb of pearl. The teeth are those of some fish, apparently of the catfish, Anarchicus lupus. These Japanese artificial mermaids have brought many a dollar into the pockets of Mr. Barnum and other showmen. Somewhat different in appearance from this, but of the same kind, was an artificial mermaid described in the Saturday Magazine of June 4, 1836. Figure 14 is a facsimile of the woodcut which accompanied it. This grotesque composition was exhibited in a glass case some years previously in a leading street at the West End of London. It was constructed of the skin of the head and shoulders of a monkey, which was attached to the dried skin of a fish of the salmon kind with the head cut off, and the whole was stuffed and highly varnished, the better to deceive the eye. It was said to have been taken by the crew of a Dutch vessel from on board a native Malacca boat, and from the reverence shown to it, it was supposed to be a representative of one of their idol gods. I am inclined to think that it was of Japanese origin. Figure 15 is described in the article above referred to as having been copied from a Japanese drawing and as being a portrait of one of their deities. Its similarity to one of those of the Assyrians, figure 2, page 3, is remarkable. The inscription, however, does not indicate this. The Chinese characters in the center, nin jiao, signify human fish. Those on the right, in Japanese hiragana or running hand, have the same purport, and those on the left, in katakana, the characters of the Japanese alphabet, mean ichi himike, one day kept alive. The whole legend seems to pretend that this human fish was actually caught and kept alive in water for 24 hours. But, as the box on which it is inscribed is one of those in which the Japanese showmen keep their toys, it was probably the subject of a penny peep show. We need not travel from our own country to find the belief in mermaids yet existing. It is still credited in the north of Scotland that they inhabit the neighboring seas, and Dr. Robert Hamilton, FRSE, writing in 1839, expressed emphatically his opinion that there was then as much ignorance on this subject as had prevailed at any former period. In the year 1797, Mr. Monroe, schoolmaster of Thurso, affirmed that he had seen a figure like a naked female sitting on a rock projecting into the sea at Sandside Head in the parish of Ray. Its head was covered with long, thick, light brown hair flowing down on the shoulders. The forehead was round, the face plump, and the cheeks ruddy. The mouth and lips resembled those of a human being, and the eyes were blue. The arms, fingers, breast, and abdomen were as large as those of a full-grown female, and altogether, that sea nympha's form of pearly light was whiter than the downy spray, and round her bosom, heaving bright, her glossy yellow ringlets play. This creature, continued Mr. Monroe, was apparently in the act of combing its hair with its fingers, which seemed to afford it pleasure, and it remained thus occupied during some minutes when it dropped into the sea. The dominie saw the maiden there, just as the daylight faded, braiding her locks of gowden hair, and singing as she braided. But he did not remark whether the fingers were webbed. On the whole, he infers that this was a marine animal of which he had a distinct and satisfactory view, and that the portion seen by him bore a narrow resemblance to the human form. But for the dangerous situation it had chosen, and its appearance among the waves, he would have supposed it to be a woman. 12 years later, several persons observed near the same spot an animal which they also supposed to be a mermaid. A very remarkable story of this kind is one related by Dr. Robert Hamilton in the volume already referred to, and for the general truth of which he vouches from his personal knowledge of some of the persons connected with the occurrence. In 1823, it was reported that some fishermen of Yell, one of the Shetland group, had captured a mermaid by its becoming entangled in their lines. The statement was that the animal was about 3 feet long, the upper part of the body resembling the human, with protuberant mammæ like a woman. The face, forehead, and neck were short and resembled those of a monkey. The arms, which were small, were kept folded across the breast. The fingers were distinct, not webbed. A few stiff, long bristles were on the top of the head, extending down to the shoulders, and these it could erect and depress at pleasure, something like a crest. The inferior part of the body was like a fish. The skin was smooth and of a gray color. It offered no resistance, nor attempted to bite, but uttered a low, plaintive sound. The crew, 6 in number, took it within their boat, but, superstition getting the better of curiosity, they carefully disentangled it from the lines and a hook which had accidentally become fastened in its body, and returned it to its native element. It instantly dived, descending in a perpendicular direction. Mr. Edmonston, the original narrator of this incident, was a well-known and intelligent observer, says Dr. Hamilton, and, in a communication made by him to the professor of natural history in the Edinburgh University, gave the following additional particulars which he had learned from the skipper and one of the crew of the boat. They had the animal for 3 hours within the boat. The body was without scales or hair. It was of a silvery gray color above and white below. It was like the human skin. No gills were observed, nor fins on the back or belly. The tail was like that of a dogfish. The mammæ were about as large as those of a woman. The mouth and lips were very distinct and resembled the human. Not one of the 6 men dreamed of a doubt of its being a mermaid, and it could not be suggested that they were influenced by their fears, for the mermaid is not an object of terror to fishermen. It is rather a welcome guest, and danger is apprehended from its experiencing bad treatment. Mr. Edmonston concludes by saying that the usual resources of skepticism, that seals and other sea animals appearing under certain circumstances, operating upon an excited imagination, and so producing ocular illusion, cannot avail here. It is quite impossible that 6 Shetland fishermen could commit such a mistake. It would seem that the narrator demands that his readers shall be silenced, if unconvinced, but he that complies against his will is of his own opinion still. This incident is well attested and merits respectful and careful consideration, but I decline to admit any such impossibility of error in observation or description on the part of the fishermen, or the further impossibility of recognizing in the animal captured by them one known to naturalists. The particulars given in this instance, and also of the supposed merman seen cast ashore dead in 1719 by the Reverend Peter Angel, page 22, are sufficiently accurate descriptions of a warm-blooded marine animal with which the Shetlanders, and probably Mr. Edmonston also were unacquainted. That animal was most probably the dugong or manatee, of which erroneous descriptions have often given rise to tales of mermaids. The general appearance of these animals, when seen partially submerged or under uncertain lighting, is well adapted to deceive an untrained observer. Their habit of raising the head and upper body out of the water, combined with the smoothness of their skin and the presence of mammary glands, has frequently led to their being mistaken for human-like creatures. We must also remember that the imagination plays a powerful role in shaping what people believe they have seen. In isolated places, where folklore is strong and scientific knowledge limited, the tendency to interpret unknown phenomena through the lens of legend is even greater. This psychological factor, coupled with the physical resemblance of certain marine animals to humans, is sufficient to account for nearly all accounts of mermaids. Nevertheless, the persistence and consistency of mermaid stories across so many cultures and ages continue to intrigue us. Whether viewed as folklore, misidentification, or expressions of deeper human archetypes, mermaids occupy a significant place in the collective imagination of humanity. As science advances and exploration of the oceans continues, it is likely that many more natural explanations will emerge to account for once mysterious sightings. But the fascination with mermaids, half woman, half fish, will likely remain, not just as a scientific curiosity, but as a symbol of mystery, beauty, and the unknown depths of both the sea and the human mind.